Welcome to the PFP Podcast.
I'm Tim Groves, and I'm Professional Communities and Engagement Manager at the CII. This podcast is part of the CII's Mental Health and Wellbeing Month and is a follow-up to a webinar called Rest, Recovery and Recharge with expert Anna Reddy. We'll be revisiting some of the key themes from the webinar and picking up some of the questions that came through from the attendees. Morning, Anna.
Morning, Tim. Nice to see you again.
You too. Thanks a lot for joining us again. And obviously our chance to catch up and follow up on your most recent webinar, the Rest, Recovery and Recharge. And we had a few questions come in, which we can pick up on and also explore some of the topics a little bit further. So I guess we can go straight into it, really. So I thought it would be quite interesting to ask you to reflect on some of your own habits that maybe you picked up on over the years. And maybe if you had any kind of significant aha moments about your own sleep and your recovery.
Yeah, well, years ago, I was one of those people that believed, you sleep when you die and the more you do, the better and the higher you're going to be achieving. But I think once you start to dig deeper and look at the science and the reasoning behind it, absolutely doesn't correlate. The more you do, the more you don't get out of life. So I think just realising the power of focusing on your rest and recovery and the impact that it has on your productivity and just reframing how your mind's thinking a little bit more has been the greatest aha moment ever. And also, I know you asked in one of your questions as well about how some people feel lazy, but trying to change that mindset in terms of you're not being lazy, you're actually being smart because you get more out of life. And it's not always about the more you put in, the more you get out. Sometimes it's about being smart with the life choices that you're making. And also, just from actually trying it myself as well, trying to focus on my sleep and rest recovery more and noticing the difference that I feel in terms of my energy and happiness as well. And that's what I just encourage everyone to do really, is just try it for yourself and see if it does make you feel happier and more energetic.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, something I've tried personally over the last few months is trying to get 10 or 15 minutes of morning light in the first hour of waking up. And I must admit, I really do notice, certainly for the morning, how much more energized I am and no sort of peaks and troughs. I generally just feel quite good, ready for the day. I still get tired in the afternoon, but that's probably because of bad habits of sitting at the laptop too long. It's funny, isn't it, though? There is this stigma still around sleeping is lazy, resting is for weaklings, and that is still there. And it's not being lazy, is it? It's important for your productivity, your brain function and your body to be healthy. So yeah, it's crazy how we still have that though.
So it's interesting, Tim, how you say how you get that 10, 15 minutes of morning light. I think, again, this is something else we need to reframe, isn't it? That years ago I would have thought, well, you just have to get out and do an hour's run or something like that. Otherwise, it's not really worth it. But 10 to 15 minutes then starts a cascade of other positive effects during the day and sets you up through all your choices during the day to be able to sleep better at night as well, and really does have a profound impact on your circadian rhythm. So it's framing that if you have only got 10 to 15 minutes, that is really, really powerful if you can get out and just do a bit of something to set you up for the day.
And something I would like to add there actually is that I snapped my Achilles back in April, so I haven't been able to do a lot of, certainly no running or anything. So my mornings have actually been sat in the garden with a book and a coffee. So I wasn't doing any exercise, which I know a lot of people feel that think that's what you need to do. Or even just now I can walk, maybe hobble around the block. And even just sitting, because like you said then, is that actually that was really good for my brain because I read a book and I was focused. You just feel a little bit more grateful for your morning as well. So that definitely helped. Something you did cover in your slides was that people aged 45 to 54 report the worst sleep. Why do you think midlife is such a difficult time for rest and recovery for people?
Well, I think there's various reasons. And I think one of them I touched on in the webinar as well, particularly for women going through that perimenopausal stage, which we've always assumed doesn't happen until your 50s, but actually can start like 10 to 15 years before, when lots of different things are happening to your hormones, your reduction of progesterone, estrogen and testosterone, but can all impact on your sleep in different ways. So it can directly impact on your sleep. So you might experience like waking up in the middle of the night that you never did before and really struggling to get back to sleep. But then it could also be that it's impacting on like your anxiety and your worry levels as well, which then impacts on your ability to fall asleep. You might be getting those night sweats as well, which wake you up, which impacts on your sleep. There's so many different things. It's not just one specific thing, but can be in a cascade of events, I keep saying, that contribute to that lack of sleep. And I think as well, in our midlife, we're probably, for a lot of people at the peak of our career, we've probably taken on quite a lot and trying to manage all that. And as we're having kids later and later, we've got more dual responsibilities. So we can be having families later on and then also have caring responsibilities as well for elderly family members as well. So you can be juggling so many different things, and you've probably taken on a lot of financial responsibility as well. You've maybe got yourself in those circles with people who are living the high life and you're trying to keep up with everybody. And I think there's something else as well to notice how our life has changed quite a bit in terms of social media. I think that pressure's massively increased in terms of keeping up with what everyone else is doing. So then you're trying to, probably work harder, putting more stress on yourself, which is causing you lots and lots of stress, which is one of the biggest causes of interrupted sleep and people struggling to get to sleep. So I think there's a few things there as well. And I suppose, once you get into like that 45, 55 stage, the body's not like it used to be really. And we start to get those niggles and aches and pains, which again could be contributing to us not getting a good night's sleep. So there's probably lots of factors there that could be causing that.
You know what? I think we could probably do a whole day-long podcast on specifically people 45, 54, because all those things you just touched on, yeah, they are huge, aren't they? I think about a lot of my friends, and myself included, is that we've got young children and I'm in my late 40s. Many, many years ago, you had them, they were probably growing up, might have, if you're lucky, maybe left home by now. And then, of course, you've got parents living older. So I've got friends who are having to look after their parents, so they're not very well. And then, as well as the social media thing, worrying about the world our kids are getting into. Okay, so something that we often hear about is this, you should be getting at least 7 to 8 hours, and that's what we should be aiming for. But from your perspective, what does quality sleep look like for getting the amount of hours that you get?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question, because we can just get really fixated on these numbers. And the more you learn about health and well-being, sometimes the more you can get a bit fixated about everything you've got to do. But I think you've just got to sometimes take a step back and go out with your own intuition. So how would you wake up feeling in the morning? And just be really honest with yourself. If every morning you're like, I'm so tired, can't get out of bed. But just go off how you feel and how you've slept. And it's a little bit about the quality as well of that sleep. So you might be like saying, well, I've been in bed for 9 hours, so I'm going to face the day being full of energy. But if that's been interrupted all night, and if actually you didn't take into account that maybe it took you an hour to get off to sleep, then you're probably not getting that quality and adequate amount of sleep that you need. So it's really kind of thinking about all those things that you do in your life that will help you get into all those stages of sleep and get that good quality sleep as well. And there's lots of things we've spoken about before that are just really sedatives that can send you off to sleep, but you're not really getting through all those different stages of sleep. So yeah, 7 to 9 hours is what we try to aim for. But again, don't get fixated on that, because there's so many things that are going on in people's lives that can hinder that. And actually, if you're just worrying about getting that number of hours sleep per night and you've got loads of stress going on in your world, it's just going to accumulate, and that anxiety and stress is going to build up. So I think just try to think about what are the things you're doing in your lifestyle that you could potentially change so that you can get more quality sleep and ultimately wake up feeling a little bit more refreshed.
I guess one of the common things, and I'm guilty of it, and even though I'm aware that it's not good for me, is looking at your phone in bed and the blue light. We hear a lot about it, but what exactly is going on then when you get in blue light? And is it the same blue light that you get from your TV? So if you're watching TV in bed, is that disruptive? Is that right?
Well, talking to sleep consultants, this is a bit of controversy really. Is it blue light or is it actually what you're watching? And I think it's probably an accumulation of both of those things really. But it's not necessarily just the blue light, which we talk about all the time. If you think about what you're watching on your phone compared to maybe what you're watching on the telly, this is where things change a little bit, don't they? Because the things on your phone are often a lot more fast-paced, aren't they? Maybe if you watch Instagram or whatever, it's those short reels which capture your attention, which are fast-paced, which are not setting your mind up for a relaxing state before you go to sleep. Equally, if you're on your device, there's probably lots of other notifications that are going on at the same time. And I think 99% of people would agree that you can pick up your phone to do one thing, and before you know it, you've been notified with all different things, and you've lost loads of time by going down a rabbit hole because of all these various notifications. There's all platforms that basically just want you to stay awake, because actually they're not making money when you're asleep. So they're not bothered about you having good quality sleep. They just want you to be awake. So in answer to your question, blue light, obviously you don't want to be stimulating yourself with lots and lots of light before you go to bed, but it's that content as well that you're watching. And It might be, maybe if you're watching telly and it's something like quite relaxing that you're watching, that's going to be completely different to something that's got you on edge all the time and has got lots of adrenaline going in you before you go to sleep. So I think it's about just looking at it with logical common sense. And if you try to minimise your phone use, because you do get all these various notifications. But yeah, it's a combination of that blue light and the content as well.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. Yeah, we talk about the blue light a lot, don't we? But actually I can imagine the content isn't really relaxing, soothing content at all. So like you said, we scroll so much.
Yeah, I mean, to add on to that as well, kids nowadays can't sit and watch films the same as they used to be able to. They get bored because they're used to that really short, snappy content, and that's what they've been brought up with. So I think it does change our mind's ability to be able to just watch things calmly and, have that slower pace of life.
My daughter's just gone to year 11 at school, so she's got a GCSEs this year, and she started really well, and I hope it lasts. But one of the things she's doing is turning the TV and putting her phone away by 9 o'clock. If she used to, sometimes I'd get messages from her at 11:30, 12, because, she woke up and looked at the phone and she was always tired. But I've noticed quite a difference in her actually. So putting that phone away or turning the TV off an hour before bed, she listens to music, which helps as well. So definitely noticed a difference there. And I'm really pleased actually, because if you're tired, your brain's not going to work. So I'm pleased. I hope it lasts. We'll see. And this was interesting as well. I don't think people have come across this for the first time when you talked about these chronotypes. So lions, bears, wolves, and dolphins. So I don't know whether maybe you could just do a real quick recap of what they are, but also how can knowing our type help us shape our daily routines and benefit from it?
Yeah, I did touch on this, didn't I? They just look at these different types of chronotypes. So your lions are those that like to get up super early. The bears are the ones that like to maybe go with the sun. The wolves are, as you would imagine, the night owls. And then the dolphins are the one that, the sleep is all over us, really. And as with anything, I don't think you can pigeonhole yourself into just one of these type. We're all individual. But just recognising where your body feels the best and where you feel the best, and noticing how you feel physically and mentally can help you just tap into how do you structure your day so that you're at the best. So for some people, I make reference to the 5 a.m. club because everyone seems to know about the 5 a.m. club, which is wonderful for some people. If they do like to get up early and if their body helps them to get up early, then that's fantastic. But if you're not one of them, you're just pedaling against the tide all the time. So you're better going with what your natural body wants to do. And then you can structure what you do around that. So different people might want to train at different times and find that helps them the most. Or you can identify, right, when is my peak concentration time? And then you try and allocate your tasks around that. And also recognising which of the times when I do get most distracted. And then you can put those strategies in place. So I know myself that I'm always really good at doing deep focus work in the afternoon, really, really good at that. The morning I can be a bit like, I need to put strategy in place to make myself be focused. So often I will book in meetings in the morning with people because I know, right, that keeps me focused on what I'm doing. And then those tasks that you've got to have that real deep concentration, I will try to schedule in the afternoon. But just knowing your own body type, if you just change it by an hour, you might see a massive difference. I personally have changed my getting up time just by an hour in the last few years. And I never get up thinking, I don't want to get up now, because it's just a simple change with that hour. But you have got to be mindful of what's happening in your life as well. So we all have work to attend and we all have family and different commitments as well. So if you've got young children, it's very hard to be like, I'm sorry, kids, you might be awake, but I've got to go with my own body type. It's a little bit hard to do that. But just knowing your natural chronotype just enables you to try and structure your day a little bit more in sync with that.
I've got a few questions that have come in from the webinar, but also since then with some of the summary feedback sheets. Somebody asked about that they can often be sat hunched up over a laptop for 2 or 3 hours and then they just feel like they just want to crash. What's going on and what can they do to combat that?
Oh, first question, why are you sat there for 2 or 3 hours? What's your reasoning behind? I know everyone's got work to do, but actually maybe just try and reframe what productivity is and focus is. Because if you sat there for 2 to 3 hours, let's be realistic, your productivity levels are probably starting to dip, aren't they? Your output is reducing from your input, definitely after maybe about 90 minutes. So maybe try to reframe it and just have a look at the science. Get something that's really compelling that makes you think, right, there is no need for me to be sat here for 3 hours. And if it's because it's the norm in the workplace, try to be bold, try to change it, share that science with someone else. Like, I found this science, after 90 minutes, we need to be having a break, because when you move, this is the important thing, it stimulates all the chemicals in your brain, which help you to be more productive. So when you move and start to exercise, you stimulate all those neurochemicals like your noradrenaline, like your serotonin, which makes you feel good, like your dopamine. All these different chemicals get stimulated. So the science tells you that you need to be moving to stimulate these chemicals. And when they're stimulated, that gives you far more clarity. It improves your prefrontal cortex, which is really important for that strategy for actually getting clarity. We all know, and if this is you now that's sat at your desk for 3 hours, reflect with time when you've been really stuck on a problem and you haven't known what to do. Maybe you've gone for a walk and all of a sudden the solutions come to you, because it does when you're moving, when you're getting a bit of a change of scenery, you're resting your mind, all of a sudden the solutions come to your mind. So in essence, that's the answer. Why are you telling yourself you need to be sat there for 3 hours? If it's because it's your workplace, it doesn't allow you, find the science, tell them the science, and you don't have to do lots and lots to just change your mindset. We did a simple breathing exercise in the webinar. We did a bit of boxing, which took, a couple of minutes. You don't have to do loads and loads, but what it does is just reset your mind and think about your output versus your input. So maybe 2 hours of high productivity work could generate more than 3 hours of just sat there.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind me doing this, but just a chance to plug one of our other webinars, actually, which is a gentleman called Kevin Chapman from the Physical Intelligence Institute. And he said, if you think when you're in your fight or flight mode, sometimes you can shrink up and be small. And if you're sat hunched over a laptop for too long, your body is being tricked into thinking, I need to produce cortisol. So that cortisol will make you tired and it gets build up, and that will then reduce you. I think if you've got cortisol, then your oxytocin, your dopamine affects those other levels, which obviously you need. But anyway, yeah, just a little plug there for that other one. But he talks about and does some good exercises that you can do actually as well, similar to what you covered, Anna.
I endorse this. I listened to this one. It was one of your first ones, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. He was the first one.
Yeah, so I've got to tell you, this worked. This definitely worked. So anyone who hasn't listened to it, listen to it. I was cleaning as I was listening to it, because I think it's fine to be doing things while you're listening. And she was doing a breathing exercise. And as I was listening to it, I looked at my children's bedrooms, which were an absolute disgrace, which would have normally sent my stress levels through the roof when we were actually doing a breathing exercise. I was thinking, children, you are so lucky, because I am feeling calmer as I'm tackling your bedroom. So yes, encourage anyone to listen to that if they did.
Thanks, Anna. That's a good plug. Thank you very much. Cheers. That was really interesting, actually, some of the things that you covered there about workplace culture. So one of the questions is, what sort of small cultural or small leadership changes could people in a business make to support their staff with better rest and recovery?
And this is a good one, because it varies from business to business. And that well-being's a very funny thing. Like, lots of people will say, right, well, we prioritize our employees' health and well-being, but then actually, what are the senior leaders doing? And I know we talk about these flat structures, but actually people do look up to the leadership team. And if the leadership team are, sending out the message that you've all got to work all hours God sends and never take a rest, then that has a ripple effect in the whole organisation. So I think just leading by example as senior leaders creates that psychological safety for others to think, yeah, do you know what? I can prioritise my own rest and recovery as well. You've got to empower people with the information that they need, as you have been doing. So empower people with that information, empower them with the motivation as to why is it important that you do prioritise your rest and recovery? Why is it important that you don't sit at your laptop for 2 to 3 hours and wonder why you're not as productive as you could be? And then put that maybe strategies in place, prompts in place. Now set up prompts on people's laptop that goes off every hour, 90 minutes. Why don't you get up and move for 5 minutes? That really speaks volumes to them that, our workplace wants us to move. Set up groups where people share what they're doing and how they're boosting their energy. And think about maybe like your meetings. Often you'll have meetings, won't you, that start at the crack of dawn. And I know you've booked one in as well. You actually says it with your words, we'll let people, start at a reasonable time. And letting people start at a reasonable time actually gets more out of it than thinking, right, 8 hours are going to give us more than letting people have a nice, calm journey there, good restful night's sleep before, and do 6 hours. Those 6 hours are going to be far more productive and you can get far more out of them as well. So I think really thinking about things science-led and logically as well. And other things which are really simple that you can change. It's like sending emails. Often people think, well, I'll send an email and then I've done it. I've ticked it off my to-do list, sending it late at night. Actually, that email's landed in someone else's inbox, which has probably started a lot of stress going in their head, thinking about what they need to do the next day, and could impact on their sleep as well. So simple things like maybe just scheduling your emails for the next day. If you want to work at a certain time and get things done, so it's out of your head, then do that. But try to schedule it for the next day so that it's not having a big impact on somebody else. I think just small little steps like that around education, around empowerment, and around like leading by example and just thinking logically and science-led, probably good starting points.
Somebody asked a question that they can't fall asleep without TV on in a bedroom. And I think she feels that she'd like to be able to find another way because she thinks that's probably impacting the quality of her sleep, even though she just falls asleep with it on. So yeah, have you got any suggestions of how maybe she could wean herself off the TV?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do this. But again, going back to looking at like the content of what you're watching, maybe, thinking a little bit about, am I watching something that's like quite calm and feel good? Or am I watching the news, which is scaring me about everything that's going on in the world? And am I going to be led there worrying all night about what's going on in the world? Two very different things. And, often when I watch the telly, it's sometimes like taking your mind through a story, isn't it? And it comes to the end, which then you feel like you can nod off to sleep. The only problem is that often TV stays on. So maybe look at like how you can maybe schedule, if you can schedule your TV to turn off at a certain time, or if you maybe think about, right, I might just transfer that TV so that I'm not watching something, just like a really calming meditation that I can listen to, and maybe schedule your phone to go off at a certain time, and how you can just maybe transfer it. Because if you think about a lot of sleep meditations, it is like a story that it takes you through, doesn't it? And you come to an end. Whereas things like counting sheep don't really work, do they? Because they never come to an end. You can count and count and count forever. I wouldn't beat yourself up about it. I'd just think about, how you could maybe swap it over to like a calming meditation, make sure it's something really calming, and just think about your routine as well before you're watching telly, because, you've got to think about everything that happens during the day and at night as well. But I think some people do like that noise. It's comforting to have that noise as well.
I've got a couple of friends, I won't use their names, so just in case they listen, but they've been using a fan in their bedroom for about 8 years now. And they take it on holiday with them as well because they can't sleep without it now. They've got so used to it. And that white noise thing, isn't it? Just drowns everything out. I have tried it actually, and it does work sometimes, but I'm a bit nervous now about getting addicted to it.
I've heard of quite a few people like that as well. And I think it goes back to that white noise, doesn't it? So again, if you're addicted to that fan, it might be a case of just downloading a white noise app. Bit easier than taking a fan away with you.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. Do sleep trackers and apps actually work, or actually do they make us more anxious about our sleep?
This is a really good question. And I'd apply this with any trackers. They're good to empower you with information, and we all need information to a certain level. So if it's going to give you the motivation to think, right, I'm going to make some really smart steps during the day that's going to help me sleep better, brilliant. But if you're, constantly looking at the tracker and like, oh my gosh, I didn't get enough sleep last night and I'm going to feel like this, then it's probably having a negative impact. So I would just use it to a certain extent, just have an understanding, and maybe just like do a little experiment on yourself. So, if you have maybe had loads of caffeine during the day, you might be able to see how your sleep was that night, or maybe you've had loads of alcohol and you'll be able to see how you slept as well. So just being able to have a bit of an understanding as to you and how your body works is a really good indicator for you. But as I said, just be honest with yourself. If it's making you anxious, then it's not beneficial. And to add on to this, they're not always 100% accurate. Unless you got it done by a medical professional, it's not going to be a really, really high accuracy. And a lot of the data shows that they're around about 50 to 80% accurate. What they are quite good at doing is telling you how much sleep you've actually had. But where they're not as particularly accurate is showing like the different stages of sleep that you go through. Those are not always as accurate as maybe the number of hours or minutes of sleep that you've actually had. So in answer to your question, again, it's really individual. Empower yourself with the information you need. But if that information overload gets to a state of worry and anxiety, then it's probably time to curb it and just trying to get as much sleep as you can. I think to add on to that as well, we can't just keep looking at like digital technology all the time, because we lose that intuition as to what's our body telling us. So I still go back to that. Listen to your bodies. Do you feel like you're ready to go to sleep then? How are you waking up in the morning? Are you waking up with energy, or are you waking up really, really lethargic and groggy?
This is quite a specific question, really, but I can imagine a lot of people going through it. Being a parent of young children, they've said, should I just accept poor sleep for a few years, or is there still something I can do?
Oh, this is a tough one. And I can't lead by example with this because I've had 3 children that have been horrendous sleepers. So when I used to go to beta groups, I just couldn't sit next to anyone whose child slept through, because I'd be like, this is just not fair. So I feel your pain. I really do feel your pain. I did have a sleep consultant on my podcast about a year ago, and she specialises in children's sleep. So I will add a link in the show notes. She's an expert in the area. But I do think it gets to a bit of a chicken and egg situation, doesn't it? Because you yourself as a parent get really, really tired. And there's probably things that you could be doing to help your child sleep better. But you just go with the easiest option, don't you? So, maybe if they're waking up in the night and you probably know you should leave them a little bit longer to go off, but you might just, whatever age they are, give them a bottle, give them a dummy. You get to that stage where it's just, you go for the easiest thing, don't you? But sometimes that's progressing their inability maybe to go off to sleep on their own. So if you can get any help for, someone else that might just get up with them for a couple of nights so that you can just reset, then that might be a really good opportunity for you then to start to help them to sleep on their own a little bit better. But I would say there's lots of experts out there that can help you with this. So I would reach out. But then as well, you've got to think about each child individually. I know my 3rd child had lots of medical problems. So you get them in a routine and then they're poorly. And there's lots of things that come in the way. So I would not beat yourself up. I wouldn't be thinking I've got to get this 7 to 9 hours sleep. And it doesn't last forever. But if you do have a newborn in particular, just try to be smart in terms of like, if you could catch up on a bit of sleep during the day, then don't be having caffeine a couple of hours before you could potentially be catching up on that sleep. So just try to be smart if you are trying to catch up during the day.
Yeah, no, that's great. Good advice. Thank you. Somebody else has asked about they often wake up at 2, 3 a.m. and then struggle to get back to sleep. Do you have any advice for them on what they can do to help them?
Yeah, I think a lot of people this can happen to. Again, I'd go back to that hormones thing. Are you female and perimenopausal? That's very common for that to start happening. Are you dealing with new types of stress that's coming in your life that is waking you up? And if we go back to the webinar, we go through those sleep cycles. So we go through that stage of light sleep, deep sleep, and that REM sleep. And naturally, we're going through lighter stages of sleep. And sometimes it can be our ability to get straight back into that next cycle, which is where you're waking up. And again, if things have happened during the day, which are not helping you sleep at night, that can then mean that when you've come out of that light stage of sleep, you're just struggling to get back into that next cycle. If you're waking up though at that time consistently, it could then become a bit of a habit that you need to try and break a little bit more. And if you are led there for a long time, worrying about it, then that can escalate the problem as well. So if you've been there for 20, 30 minutes, don't just sit worrying and panicking about it. Maybe just try and do something really calming. Maybe just read for a little bit, a meditation and keeping it really, really dark, and then go back to try and sleep again. Because what you don't want to do is start panicking about going to sleep, and because then that's just going to make it worse. And you don't want your bedroom to be a place of fear because you think, I'm going to be waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can't get to sleep. So just try and maybe move away for a little bit, read something calming like meditation, bit of calming music, still in a dark place, and then go back to try and get to sleep as well. And naturally as well, as we age, we struggle to sleep a little bit more and don't get into that deep stage of sleep as much. And again, this can be due to illness or aches and pains that are keeping us awake at night. But in general, we don't get into those deep stages of sleep as much as we age.
I've been through that myself. In fact, made me feel quite anxious just hearing you talk about it. I remember I used to get myself quite frustrated at one point waking up. And something eventually I found is that just keep a notepad next to my bed and then just jotting down what's on my mind. And then usually it was work stuff. And, because work's so busy, and then it's not until sometimes you're lay in bed and all of a sudden, you can't talk about that. And the last thing you want to do is get up, obviously. And then you get frustrated because you can't get back to sleep. But something I started doing recently, and it's off the back of Kevin Chapman's Physical Intelligence, is that breathing that you were talking about, that short breath and then a long, slow out breath. Now, I don't go to sleep straight away, but the next thing I know is I'm waking up. So there must be something in that breathing. And obviously you have to focus. So I do sort of feel like, well, it's waking me up doing this because I'm really concentrating on my breathing. So it does temporarily, but actually it does put you back into that parasympathetic system. So that has worked for me. Now, if anybody listening wants to try it, but we're all different, aren't we? But those two things have worked for me when it comes to sort of waking up, thinking about things in the early hours. So
yeah, I think that's a great point, Tim, because when you write things down, it's a bit like moving it from your brain onto something else. So you can just park it for a little bit. If there is loads and loads of things, that's keeping you awake with work, then maybe it's about a brave conversation at work as well about workload and overload that needs to happen in the workplace. But yeah, definitely as well, as you said, when you breathe in, but when you breathe out, you're stimulating that parasympathetic nervous system. And I always remember the difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic, because para is like a parachute. So it's like floating down.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good. That's interesting. This made me sort of think, actually, we don't need to be brave, but why don't we just have the conversation at work and feel it's okay to say, do you know what, I'm a bit stressed at the moment. I'm waking up at the moment thinking about work stuff, and just have a chat with your boss. And sometimes you might even just feel a bit lighter just for getting it off your chest. And she might say, well, let's have a look at work, see if I can help. So you never know, do you? I suppose, unless you have that conversation. So that might be something for a bit of a takeaway for all of us, really. We're all a bit guilty. Right. Well, I think we're almost at time, but I thought it'd be really good to finish with your top 3 tips that could probably make a difference, that people could maybe try today, this week, sometime, to help them with their sleep. What would your top 3 be?
This is really hard because it's really individual to everyone, really hard. But I think, first of all, just stop thinking it's about just what you do to wind down when you're going to sleep. Think about what you're doing during the day. So curving your caffeine after a certain time, after maybe lunchtime, could really make a big difference in the way that you sleep. Second one, this is hard. Making sure that you've got yourself to a stage where you do feel tired. So try and get that bit of movement during the day. Try and take that time to keep resetting your stress levels. Don't just think that I just reset my stress levels at night. Just take those little moments during the day to reset your stress levels so that they're not sky high when you're going to sleep. And then my next tip would be, if you really are struggling, don't just sit on it. So the sleep charity came out with some data that said 14 million people are struggling with their sleep. And actually insomnia, which I'll say this again, is 3 nights of broken or struggling to get to sleep, 3 nights per week for 3 months, which is not a huge amount of time, but that is classification of insomnia. There'll be some people that can't get that, but then there's other people that won't. So it could be lifestyle or life events that are happening, but that is what will be a definition of insomnia. So please don't just sit on it and let it build up. Please reach out to someone who could really help you. And there's lots of things that are available, and particularly CBTI is really good for sleep.
And what's the CBTI again, sorry?
Cognitive behaviour therapy for insomnia.
Okay, great. Super. Well, Anna, thank you so much. There's been loads of good stuff in there, as there was in the webinar. And I guess if anybody listening has any other questions, I'm sure we'll post about this on LinkedIn. So add a question or drop over an email to myself or Anna, and we'll pick those up. But thank you, Anna. It's been great. Really enjoyed chatting to you over the last few weeks with the events. And thank you, everyone at home, for listening as well.
Thank you, Tim. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the PFP Podcast. You can find useful links in the show notes and related articles on the website, along with further podcasts. This has been part of our Mental Health and Wellbeing Month, and we have many more webinars and resources that you might have missed, and also some more coming up. So please follow us on LinkedIn and check out the CRI Wellbeing Hub so you can join us for further sessions. And also please like, review and subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.